U 13. izdanju emisije Diplomata koju Euronews Srbija realizuje u saradnji sa magazinom Diplomacy Commerce govori Mišel Kameron, ambasador Kanade u Srbiji, Crnoj Gori i Severnoj Makedoniji. Nakon toga videćemo kako je bilo na prijemu povodom Dana Pada Bastilje, nacionalnog praznika Francuske, na proslavi Dana nezavisnosti Crne Gore u Madlenijanumu, kao i na promociji projekta Atika World u hotelu Hyatt Regency, koji su prisustvovali ambasadori Egipta i Bugarske. Videćemo i intervju sa Vojinom Đorđevićem, predsjednikom kompanije Voda, kao i ekskluzivnu reportažu iz Ankare, gde je koleginica Svetlana Nenadović iz Diplomacy Commerce Austria prisustvovala centralnoj proslavi Dana demokratije i nacionalnog jedinstva Turske. A sada prelazimo na diplomatske vesti. Ministar spoljnih poslova Marko Đurić primio je u oproštenu posetu šefa delegacije Evropske unije u Republici Srbiji Emanuela Žofrea. Đurić je zahvalio ambasadoru Žofreu na ličnom zalaganju i doprinosu evropskom putu Srbije tokom svog mandata i poželeo mnogo uspeha u budućem radu. Šef srpske diplomatije je u osvrtu na situaciju u regionu i svetu podvukao da je Srbija opredeljena za mir, stabilnost i saradnju. Naglasio je da Srbija uvek bira dijalog i da je posvećena pronalaženju rešenja mirnim putem, uz uverenje da je to jedini način za rešavanje svih otvorenih pitanja. Đurić je informisao sagovornika o situaciji na Kosovu i Metohiji i položaju srpskog naroda, izrazivši zabrinutost zbog niza provokacija i jednostranih eskalatornih poteza Prištine. Državna sekretarka u Ministarstvu spoljnih poslova Nevena Jovanović, doskorašnja ambasadorka Srbije u Severnoj Makedoniji, učestvovala je 11. i 12. jula na Dubrovnik forumu 2025 u organizaciji Ministarstva spoljnih i evropskih poslova Hrvatske. Jovanović je ukazala na značaj ovakvih skupova u složenim geopolitičkim okolnostima i potvrdila spremnost Srbije za otvoren dijalog o pitanjima od zajedničkog interesa. Naglasila je važnost regionalne saradnje i ponovila opredeljenje Srbije za jačanje dobrosusedskih odnosa i unapređenje ekonomskih veza, što posebno doprinosi suočavanju sa izazovima. Govoreći o evropskim integracijama, naglasila je da je članstvo Srbije u EU jedan od najvažnijih spoljno-političkih prioriteta, kao i da Srbija ostaje posvećena sprovođenju neophodnih reformi. Takođe, podvukla je značaj saradnje sa NATO kroz partnerstvo za mir i naglasila doprinos KFOR-a u očuvavanju stabilnosti na Kosovu i Metohiji. U Domu Narodne skupštine Republike Srbije je u organizaciji Kongresa Srpsko-američkog prijateljstva održana konferencija Beogradski strateški dijalog, partnerstvo Srbije, Izraela i SAD, koji su, pored predsjednice parlamenta Ane Brnabić, ministra spoljnih poslova Marka Đurića i ministra evropskih integracija Nemanje Starovića, prisustvovali i ambasadorka Izraela u Srbiji i brojni drugi zvaničnici. Ministar Đurić je izrazio zadovoljstvo jer su u Beogradu okupljeni oni koji prepoznaju da je partnerstvo Srbije, Izraela i Sjedinjenih Američkih Država partnerstvo za budućnost od kojeg mogu da imaju korist i naša međunarodna pozicija, naša ekonomija, bezbednost, oblast visokih tehnologija, ali i svi naši građani. I ovom prilikom Đurić je uputio apel za oslobađanje Alona Ohela, izraelsko-srpskog državljanina, koji se već 648 dana nalazi u tamnici Hamasa. Govoreći o strateškom partnerstvu Srbije, Izraela i SAD, šef srpske diplomatije je izrazio uverenje da ono jeste partnerstvo za budućnost i da u Srbiji postoji snažna politička volja za razvijanjem odnosa i sa Izraelom i sa SAD. Dear viewers, welcome to another episode of The Diplomat. My name is Mijat Kontić, and today speaking with us is Her Excellency Mišel Kameron, the Ambassador of Canada to Serbia. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. The question that I would like to start this interview with is related to your diplomatic career. You've received multiple awards, including the Minister's Award for Consular Excellence and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. You've also served as the Canadian ambassador to Lebanon with responsibilities to Syria. How have all of these experiences affected your approach to diplomacy here in Serbia?
Look, first of all, thank you for recognizing, some of the awards that I've received or the promotion to ambassador, particularly the first time I went out as ambassador. But I think it's important to underline, nobody gets an award as an individual, at least particularly in the Canadian system. It's really a recognition of the teams, the partnerships, the shared goals, that I've been able to work with people around, and then a recognition that that is something that Canada values. When I was promoted to ambassador in Lebanon, you know, that was a recognition that I could go into any circumstance, bring people around an issue, work with a great team, whether it be the embassy team, the business community, the local government, and really sort of bring people around an issue to help solve problems. So I think my career up till now, well, yes, you mentioned, you know, awards and promotions, it really is about the Canadian value of partnerships, shared goals, and everybody working around a common, you know, a common interest. And I think I bring that here in Serbia.
Absolutely. Now, this year marks the 84th year of bilateral relations between Canada and Serbia. How do you see this relationship, or should I say, how do you see its evolvement through the last decade?
Well, look, one thing that I've learned about being here in Serbia is I have to start an answer with history. So,
absolutely.
So you've got a very direct question, but I was thrilled to learn, look, before I came to Serbia, that we have had a long history of Serbian migration to Canada. It started in the 1850s. We had a large wave in the 1900s, early 1900s to Western Canada. And Serbian Canadians, they helped build my country. They helped build Canada. They were involved in infrastructure construction. We made a railroad from coast to coast to create this country we call Canada. They were involved in forestry, mining, everything in between. And then, of course, during World War I, Canadian soldiers came back after being, you know, in Europe, helping the war effort, and they came back with stories of Serbian resistance and resilience. I mean, it's legendary when they came back to say, wow, and imagine Canadians, these were 19 to 24-year-olds, and I heard of stories of this before I ever thought of coming to Serbia.
It sounds like such an unlikely alliance.
Yeah. And I mean, to come back with a positive story from war, I can't imagine. So maybe that's why it was legendary. It was a positive, you know, a positive story in the war effort. And then I come to Serbia, and I see that Canadians during the war, we sent over medical missions to help people of this country, you know, deal with the ravages of war and disease. And so in pockets around Serbia, that's legendary. So I think we have to look that we came, you know, while we're talking about diplomatic relations, you have to look back at the people relationships, right? So we had that good, solid base, that mutual understanding and respect, if you will.
This was the basis for its involvement.
I believe so. And I believe that's why, you know, over the course of the 84 years, Serbia and Canada haven't always seen eye to eye. You know, we've had challenges, there have been historic challenges, yet still we remain diplomatic, you know, had diplomatic relations. And that isn't always the case if you look around the world. Two countries that don't see eye to eye on specific issues, they often, you know, have a little dip in their relationship or they part ways for a little bit. And that wasn't the case with Serbia and Canada. So before I came and before I ever even considered a post to Serbia, I said, why? You know, what's so unique here? And I saw two things, I think. Well, maybe I'll throw in a third. But two definitely, you know, Canada and Serbia, they both believe in the power of conversation, alliances, but also relationships with those that don't necessarily share their worldview. They recognize that you can't just sort of let one issue upend a conversation. One, you don't know what you're going to need to be aligned on in the future, but also that's not how you function in the world. And particularly now, imagine in this global context, right? Imagine if a country didn't speak with countries that don't align with it. So both Canada and Serbia, I believe, recognize that, and we've maintained the diplomatic relations over the 84 years. We also have that strong people-to-people connection. We have at least 100,000 Serbian Canadians.
That's amazing.
I mean, at least. I think myself and maybe the Australian ambassador, we fight over who has more, but...
it's up there, yeah.
And look, every corner that I go to in Serbia, I meet another Serbian Canadian. It's fantastic. Talk about making me
even
feel
myself,
at home.
I had a lot of people, that went to Canada.
See, and that's why I feel so at home.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you do.
And then I guess if I had to say maybe a third reason why we continued that, I mean, I have to say it. Obviously, we have the best diplomats between our two countries, and clearly we share them with each other.
That is true.
Look, I had to throw in some willful
No, and I'm glad that you did, yeah.
self-promotion
Something that I would like to ask as well is, what are the goals that you hope to achieve during your tenure here in Belgrade?
Well, you know, as an ambassador to a country, I think first and foremost, when you become ambassador or a diplomat to a country, you want the best for the country you're in. You wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. So first and foremost, I want to find a way to assist Serbia in any way that Serbia wants Canada to, whether it be in the field of deepening the economy, whether it be assistance in figuring out how Canada has done something that Serbia needs help with. But again, if Serbia wants Canada or needs Canada to assist in something, my first goal here is to find a way to make that happen in a way that that respects what Serbia needs and wants. Of course, as an ambassador, I want to deepen our bilateral relationship. I was even though I feel at home, we have so many shared citizens.
It's already at a high level, this collaboration, yeah.
Absolutely, but I was expecting, I don't know, I was expecting maybe some areas that we would be further along than we are. And so I'm really hoping to encourage the deeper connection between our two countries, whether it's government to government, people to people, business to business, academia to academia, anything in between, education, culture. I just want to deepen that relationship because it deserves it. Of course, wherever you go, you know, usually there's deep relationships between a country and its neighbors. So Canada's a little far off. It's far off in geography, but not in heart, not in spirit, you know, not in cultural connections. And then, you know, thirdly, I want to deepen our economic relationship over and above any other partnerships. A former prime minister of mine in an ambassador meeting said, wherever you go, promote economy first, peace and security second. And not economy necessarily in and of itself, but his view was if people can feed themselves, if they can educate their children, if they have enough money to make choices, peace and security follow. And so I think about that often when I think about the challenges in the world, making sure that everyone in the world, and Serbia, of course, which is where I'm serving, you know, has that standard of living that it solves so many problems. So I think a third goal would be to deepen that economic connection.
Understood.
Yeah.
Now, Serbia has a unique geopolitical position, not only in the Balkans, but related to Europe as well. How does Canada support Serbia's aspirations towards joining the EU?
Look, first and foremost, we see Serbia as what it is. It's the most consequential political, economic, and security country in this region, right? Anything Serbia does has reverberations with its neighbors and in the broader region. So Serbia is an extremely important country, and we recognize that, absolutely. Serbia has said, or I've heard the Serbian government say, and I've seen opinion polls where maybe half the Serbian population.
It's always shifting, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say roughly half, I'll round, have said that they want to join the EU. And from a Canadian perspective, we want to support Serbia in its aspirations. We believe the EU offers security, economic, educational, cultural growth. I mean, I've had the opportunity to travel around Europe across my career, and I've seen some of the new entrants to the EU, some of the countries that have been there joined the EU more recently. And the difference in their prosperity, their ability to go into a multilateral forum and bring people around their issue, it's unquestionable. And so while Canada and myself believe that's the best path for Serbia and we want to support Serbia in that aspiration, as long as the Serbian people and the Serbian government want that, we want to help. And back to the answer to one of my previous questions, I want the best for this country. I want to, if if Serbia wants some assistance in rule of law legislation or how we created freedom of media and all of the things that Canada, we might be a little bit ahead of the curve on in some areas, if there's anything that Canada can do, like lending its expertise, giving advice, recognizing Serbia is a different environment, and they'll take what advice works for them and what doesn't, I want to be a part of that. We have a small grants program that civil society and others apply for, and so through that we've been able to do some very impactful projects that are consistent with what Serbia is trying to achieve, like its people and its government, and that is consistent with its EU path. Or, quite frankly, the work that you do to get into the EU in and of itself is valuable.
It's maybe even more important than the very membership. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Like if you look, any country that gets better at rule of law, and I think there's almost every country in the world that there's always a bit of improvement, or has free and fair elections, and that has media that is open to all, that only helps a country move forward.
You also mentioned security. For Canada, NATO is the cornerstone of security. How do you view the stance of the Serbian government towards NATO right now?
You're right. Canada, we were a founding member of NATO in 1949. Imagine coming out of, well, what was the First World War, then the Second World War. We had just gotten our own passports. I mean, we were a country since 1867, member of the British Empire, and we kind of sort of stood on our own for a little bit, finally. And so kind of as a country with a bit more freedom than we've had before, of course, NATO, and it's, with 32 members now, became a cornerstone of our security. We believe global issues require global solutions and global alliances. Now, looking at Serbia, of course, they have a different history with NATO. It's easy for me to sit from a Canadian perspective. It's all sunshine and light, and we haven't had the same history, right? So it's perfectly understandable. I saw a recent public opinion poll that 80% of Serbians are not willing to join NATO or against joining NATO, and that's completely understandable with the different history. What I would sort of encourage folks to look at, that while history is extremely important, and we can't forget our own specific histories, we need to look at the NATO of today, the Serbia of today, and the global challenges. Right? So when I look at, me personally, and when I look at the global challenges and I look at what potential solutions are, NATO is still right for Canada. I've appreciated that Serbian, the Ministry of Defense, they have collaborated with NATO on Partnership for Peace. There are joint training exercises, or there's training through that. And so what I see in Serbia is, I see it reflected everywhere. It's open. Maybe cautiously pragmatic is how I would characterize it. So look, if the will of the Serbian people and the Serbian government, if they make the decision themselves without any outside influence or disinformation, and they think that NATO, that alliance is right for them, I will be here to assist. If instead it's sort of a collaboration, interoperability when it needs to be, or if they've come up with a different way forward through the Partnership for Peace or others with NATO, then we'll also support them in that ambition.
Even without the membership to NATO, there's still this coexisting,
Yeah, I mean, every country has a right to make its own security decisions, right? That's right for them, given what their people want, what the history can bear, what they need right now, but they also need to look to the future, and that's, nobody has a crystal ball thinking about what do we need, 10 steps ahead. So I like to think that while 80% of the Serbian population is not inclined towards NATO membership, I also believe that Serbian people are very pragmatic and can look at, okay, what do we need? What do we need in the future? And if NATO membership or NATO partnerships, however light they'll be, that's for this country to decide.
An important factor for the future is as well climate change. Canada has committed to net zero emissions by 2050. How does this shape Canada's foreign policies and mostly in the international negotiation regarding climate?
What I love about Canadian foreign policy is that it's really about our values. And I've noticed that we're very consistent throughout the years. It doesn't matter if our government changes or particular domestic situation changes. We believe 100% that people have a right to breathe clean air. We believe fundamentally that no person should have to cut their lifespan short because they were breathing in emissions. And we fundamentally believe that we have to protect the environment for future generations. Like it's in our DNA, it's in our heart, so that of course spills out into our foreign policy. I'm happy to report that right now Canada, 80% of its electricity comes from means that don't produce emissions. 80%. I mean, yeah, I mean,
it's a big feat.
I mean, it is. I mean, we're lucky. We've got the geography. We're able to do.
This also plays a big part. Yeah.
Yeah, we have hydroelectric power that is fantastic. Wind, solar, nuclear. We rely on as well, but we have a strong oil and gas and coal industry. And I shouldn't even say but, it's an and. And it has fueled the Canadian economy. It has created great jobs. It has built our country and continues to build our country. So 19% of our energy still comes from those fossil fuels. And we're looking at ways to make sure that communities, people, and whomever still have good jobs, can still feed their families, can still educate their children as we move towards...
So the transition doesn't harm them existentially as well.
Exactly. I mean, look, I've said it in a number of places. I'm from a coal mining area of Canada. Coal mining paid for my parents' wedding. So if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. So while I'm all for these alliances powering past coal, I know that I wouldn't be here without coal, right? So, so you have to... You have to
balance it.
You have to balance it, and we're capable. So, sorry, I sort of digressed there, but because we are so passionate about it, of course it leads into our foreign policy. So domestically, we fundamentally believe this. So what we do abroad, I mean, we have a broad spectrum from trying to demonstrate... not even trying to, demonstrating climate leadership. You know, we stand forward, we're happy to share our expertise, our research, our clean tech companies and technology. We want the world to know about them. We build alliances. We signed on to the Paris Accord. I think there's 196 signatories, might be one or two less. I haven't checked today if countries have changed. And we believe in that. We also founding member of Powering Past Coal, again, a global alliance to try and help countries transition from coal-powered electrical plants to others, or not even electrical plants, it could be individual heating, right, which pollutes the air. We've also contributed to climate financing. Again, because we believe that nobody should have to breathe in, you know, polluted air, and that everyone has a right to not experience climate change,
as much as it's possible.
As much as possible, as much as we can stop it. It shouldn't be because you're a poor country that, oh, tough. Yeah. You have to continue to have polluted air and contribute to climate change. And so we've contributed to climate financing to ensure that the poorest countries have access to technology and money to sort of help their citizens. Also in our development programming around the world, when we're helping poorer countries develop the same standard of living as other countries, in there, we include, so if you come to us and say, hey, we want to do this project, we look at the climate impact. And if it negatively impacts the climate or environment or emissions, we work with you to kind of adjust that and find a better way forward. So look, in everything that we do in foreign policy, there's that element of the environment. It's just because it is such a fundamental part of our being, it influences everything we do. It influences how we negotiate it. You know, we negotiated the Canada-EU trade agreement. That's lovely. All about trade. What does that have to do with the environment? And both parties insisted on a clause that we're going to respect the provisions in the Paris Agreement, which was about emissions and climate change. And so even in development projects, working humanitarianly with the poorest countries, or in broader trade projects or broader trade agreements, we make sure that the environment and emissions are part of all of our negotiations.
It's not all focused only on profit.
No, exactly. It's, again, back to those words. Everybody has a right to be healthy and be economically able to support their families. And so that weaves its way through everything we do.
Certainly does. Now, you've also mentioned trade, and this is where Canada and Serbia have had a positive trend lately. In the last decade, this is the first time that trade has surpassed 100 million Canadian dollars. What are the factors that actually contributed to this, and how can both countries build on this success?
So before I came here, I looked at the statistics. So we have a central government department that's on Statistics Canada. We look called Statistics Canada. We always, try and make data-driven decisions. And we were on track then, and we actually surpassed 100 million. We're at 160 million. Wow. I mean,
that's a big difference.
Well, it is. So at the end of 2024, that's where we ended up. And as I've said before, trade between neighbors naturally is high, right? It's shared history, economies, and whatnot. And so all around the world, when you take a look, neighbors tend to be the number one trading partner of most countries. And so when I saw this, finally, we're starting on the uptick. I'm like, I wonder why. And I looked at individual cases of successes, like individual cases where we all of a sudden had an uptick in the trade relationship or foreign direct investment. And when I took a look at it, it almost goes back to what I discussed earlier about that mutual respect that I first noticed in stories from World War I. I think, if I'm not mistaken, each of these successes and the whole reason for that uptick was, whether it be finally or yay, we're finally seeing the results, it was a mutual recognition of what Canadian businesses and Serbian businesses bring to the table. Okay? So just two examples to underline this. The Aviation Academy wanted world-class flight simulators to solve a local problem, which was Air Serbia, with its explosive growth. I mean, just look at the routes that it has now. They needed pilots. So you need the safe, cost-effective way to train pilots. You don't want to just put them on an airplane and say good luck, right? It's kind of an expensive mistake. So they're looking for world-class flight simulators. Okay, so Serbian problem, Serbian issue needs to be resolved. We have a company in Canada called CAE Incorporated. They're world-renowned for their world-class flight simulators. So they got in touch, and there was this exchange, and there's now a Canadian flight simulator here in Serbia that's training Serbian pilots. Well, I guess they could fly anywhere. Of course. But I hope that they're going to Air Serbia to open up direct routes. But so there was one. Another one, we have a company called Pratt & Whitney Canada, and they create turbo engines for airplanes. I don't know why we're all in the aviation sector, but that was a big uptick. That's where I'm at. And they partnered up with Prince Aviation here in Serbia because of the expert mechanics, engineers, and whatnot here. And they collaborated to open up the only one of its kind in Europe, an authorized service center for Pratt & Whitney engines that come out post-rental. So they service and refurbish, probably a couple of other verbs in there. But the Canadian company recognized the expertise here in Serbia. Serbia recognized, the quality of Pratt & Whitney engines. And so together, they jumped off and have this partnership. Now it's a crucial
part of this Air Serbia program. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so I think if I can, and I've looked at a number of different examples, really trying to do a deep dive on why the uptick in that bilateral economic relationship. and how I can leverage that. I mean, look, as I mentioned, I want the best for Serbia. I want the best for our relationship. And so when I tried to figure out, okay, what can I leverage here? I realized, oops, I just need to back up and let business find a way.
Of course, it's a natural path. Yeah.
But I also like to think, so even though there's that mutual respect, government to government, we've done a few great things. We've signed double taxation agreements so people and companies aren't taxed twice, right? So we have that agreement, a social security agreement, and a few other agreements, a foreign investment protection program. And so with those agreements, we sort of set the conditions that, hey, companies, you can collaborate, you can find a way, and as a government, we're going to set the stage so that you're not disadvantaged, you know, by having, you know, a foot in both countries. So,
and, do you maybe even know how many Canadian-owned businesses are currently operating in Serbia?
I wish I knew, but actually it's a good thing I don't know the exact number. In countries where companies have trouble coming in, understanding the rules, making connections, or really connecting on a people-to-people, business-to-business level, that's where we hear about all the companies. So because Canadians don't necessarily, or Canadian companies don't necessarily have that problem, they come, they set up, they hire lawyers to figure out what they need, and it works well. They can hire people. I've had the privilege in the last 6 months to travel on every corner in Serbia. The few that I missed when I was coming here as a tourist 10 years ago. I didn't think I missed any, but I did. And I keep running into fantastic Canadian companies. If we look in Belgrade, we've got Tens Torin. This is a company that creates AI or hardware that fuels AI. They have an R&D center here. They're hiring engineers and, well, a variety of professions, but they have spots in Canada, or premises in Canada, and premises here in Belgrade. Blue Cat, a software engineering company. I think they're up to 200 employees. Wow. I was down in Niš, and the research and development arm of AMD, which is in Canada, in Toronto. They have an R&D center in Niš, in the Science and Technology Park, as well as Belgrade. So I'm like, wow, we have manufacturing companies here. And we're talking world-class manufacturing companies. Magna International, which has been at the leading edge of research and development on EV parts. Yeah. So they have plants or facilities here. And we also have mining companies that are here. As you know, Canada, one of our fundamental industries that helped build Canada was mining, and we have a number of companies here. While mining is a touchy subject here in Serbia, and I fully respect Serbia's right and the necessity of them choosing their own path. If they determine that mining is where they want to continue to go, we have great Canadian companies active here. They've invested, I think, about 300 million euro thus far. And, you know, they respect environmental legislation back in Canada. We insist that they respect Canadian environmental and employment laws. And so I think they're a great choice for partnership. And so, as I mentioned, you know, these Canadian companies, they found a way, you know, and it wasn't necessarily with the help of the embassy, although we are here to support them. They just find a business environment that is similar to Canada. They find educated, innovative workforce, which of course is necessary. And then of course the Serbian government, they have to set the conditions so that foreign direct investment and foreign companies do come here, and they have. Yeah. And so Canadian companies, you know, they're thriving. Every time I go to one, they're growing yet again.
That's amazing to hear.
and I think the limiting factor is just finding enough of a workforce.
Yeah, right? So we call them sweet problems, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
But it's perfect to hear that our workforce is very much compatible with the Canadian companies as well. Something that Canada is also known for is its leadership in gender equality. What is the Canadian recipe, and how can Serbia learn from it?
The Canadian recipe. Well, look, I'll start with, we have made mistakes over the years, right? And we have learned from those mistakes, whether it be in gender equality or as we look at it, diversity in general. We're lucky that Canada is made up of so many different cultures. You know, if you walk down a Canadian city, you see different colors, hear different languages. It's lovely. It's such a lovely grouping and a lovely way to grow up. But what that does mean is that it takes a little bit more consultation. It means that we have to ensure that whenever we're making decisions or building a team, it just makes sense that you have that diversity of thought, opinion, experience, and that includes with gender equality. I think we've done a few things, different layers. So our government itself has played a leadership role. If they're going to encourage gender equality, well, they're going to make sure that you see it. Half of our ministers are female, or another way to put it, half of them are male.
Congratulations.
We've more or less reached gender parity with ambassadors as well. It's roughly, sometimes it goes 48-52,
of course, but it's still
either
there, yeah.
way. But it's a commitment, right? We have educated women and men who could be anywhere. So we lead with that. The Canadian government has also passed legislation. It's illegal to discriminate because of your culture or your gender. We make sure that we very quickly prosecute each time that this, you know, comes before the courts. And so people can be sure that the laws will be applied for them.
So enforcement is a bigger, maybe even a role to it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you're from a poor family, a rich family, or anything in between. You can be sure that the law is there for you. So that's great. We include gender analysis in every agreement we sign. If I have to sign a contract for something in, let's say, in my last job in headquarters, I have to see if that differentially impacts women or marginalized people. Even if on the surface it looks like it doesn't, you have to really think and do this, you know, there's a scientific analysis that's done.
So this is a prerequisite.
A prerequisite before you can even sign. And so that kind of leadership, it just sort of permeates throughout everything that we do. Again, it's one of our core values. And then we've also ensured that our education system is equitable, fair, whether it be for women or men, or different cultural groups, our Indigenous folks, or others. And it's, again, back to that data-driven. You know, for example, Statistics Canada showed us that women weren't graduating in science and technology. So despite at age 14, girls and boys tended to be similarly interested in science, they weren't coming through our engineering faculties. Some of our mathematics graduates, you know, it was predominantly men. And so Canada really took a deep dive. Why is this? What can we do to support that? And so we implemented programs to ensure that women were encouraged to do STEM as much as their male counterparts. Sometimes that means differential scholarships. Sometimes it means changing the textbooks. We discovered that when I went through high school, my science textbooks, all of the men were the scientists, and all the women were in the lower paying or different jobs. Yeah. And so we had to get rid of textbooks and start over again. So I'm reticent to tell Serbia what it needs to do, or any country what it needs to do. Serbia is smart and capable, right? When you put your mind to a problem, you can solve it. But maybe something in what I've said can spurn some thought or some ideas here within Serbia, and maybe some of those, you know, some of those ideas could be applied here. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't mention as well that, again, with our small grants program, we have encouraged women in STEM, or girls in STEM. So we've done projects on that, and we've also done projects on gender-based violence.
Now, Canada is well known for its excellence in education. Could you tell us what are the best examples of cooperation between Canadian and Serbian educational institutions and S&T programs?
Right. Thank you so much for recognizing, you know, the value of Canadian education. Of
course.
I mean, I always mention I'm from a very poor area of Canada, and I still get to be ambassador. We have great elementary and high school public education, as well as world-renowned research institutions when we talk about our higher education. Like the businesses in the business cooperation between Canada and Serbia, we don't always hear about this great cooperation between institutions. Almost like businesses always find a way. I find researchers and academics, they also find their own ways through, I don't know, conferences and papers and all of that. So the ones that we do know about are noteworthy. In one case, we have what's called the LEADER Project. It's Western University's Ivy School of Business. They've been coming here for 10 years. So we've had 10 years of graduates. They come and run a boot camp for entrepreneurs, for young entrepreneurs. And you should see them. They're just so full of energy and got these great ideas and this great business sense. And then when you add on this world-class business learning and education, it just takes them to the next level. And I continue to meet graduates of the LEADER program throughout Serbia, which is amazing.
It's beautiful.
It is. And then we also have a Serbian Association of Canadian Studies that runs a variety of programs across political, a variety of education topics, and they've been doing wonderful work. So that's great collaboration. I got to greet 3 Canadian business teams, or teams from business schools, here for the BBICC, the Belgrade Business International Case Competition. So we have all of these little examples. And then we have more, systemic or more formalized agreements. So there's an MOU between the world-renowned Queen's University in Canada and Novi Sad University. That MOU was signed last year, and so we're working to deepen that relationship on cooperation in education. So look, there's all these little pieces. Some are individual. Yeah. I was thrilled to learn that Canada is in the top 5 destination countries for Serbian students who want to get a graduate degree. So look, there's all kinds of those people-to-people, institution-to-institution cooperation. Where I think some of the best cooperation or some of the best potential that a government sort of, or an embassy has to sort of help and assist was Minister Bega, or former Minister Begovic, went to Canada in September, particularly on the science and technology front. And she met with a variety of interlocutors in science and technology in Canada. And one of them, she went to our largest, sort of an equivalent of a science and technology park, but an accelerator, the Mars Discovery Labs and Venture Labs in Canada. And so she helped to create, I mean, just with her force and given the quality institutions that she visited, she was able to facilitate the signing of an MOU between the Science and Technology Parks and Venture Lab, which is similar to a Science and Technology Park. It's an accelerator. And now we're seeing some of the fruits of that cooperation. So some of the students who have benefited from niches, or Novi Sad's actually, Science and Technology Park, they've come through and now they're going to be doing a pitching session with this Canadian accelerator and seeing where the cooperation can happen. Can you imagine? I'm like, oh, I'm kind of giggly. And then through this MOU, we're now going through a number of these partnerships and these opportunities. So watch this space. I mean, let's come back and do this chat next year, and I think we'll have even deeper.
It's very encouraging to see how those projects have actually evolved into something material. Yes.
Well, and I mean, not to mention, we have so many Serbian Canadians that are just, as we call them, Canadians. And so you find them in all walks of life, and you find folks in universities, researchers, academics, VP of AMD, their R&D lab in Toronto is a Serbian Canadian. Like, I mean, just so
many intertwines.
Yeah, and when we talk about this cooperation in science and technology, I took your question as government to government cooperation, but it's everywhere. It's business cooperation,
Absolutely.
It's academic.
It exists outside of this bubble, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes as an ambassador, even though it's hard, I just kind of have to back up and let that happen, but be ready to jump
flow.
in and assist if I can.
Of course. For the end of this interview, I would like to ask you, how do you see the future of Serbian and Canadian relations? What is your vision that you hope to achieve as well before you have to return sadly?
Well, yeah, look, relationships take a bit of while. So let's project, I don't know, 10 years from now, you and I are sitting here and we're talking about this interview, like what the difference. And I hope that you and I are going to be sitting here and say, hey, remember 10 years ago when we spoke? We were at this just about to see this massive increase, deepening and strengthening of Canada-Serbia relations. And you and I go, ha, 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 what have we achieved since then? And what I would like to see, first and foremost, that Canada and Serbia, in the multilateral fora, like outside of our two countries, that we are a force for human rights, for great security around the world, for just, doing good in the UN and other forums like that. I would like to say, wow, didn't we come together and achieve something? That would sort of be the ultimate.
Absolutely.
I would also like to see that just Canadian-Serbian businesses are thriving. Just that there's that mutual respect, understanding, and just businesses found a way so that both of our countries, one, Canada continues and Serbia delivers to all corners of its territory. Everybody, both of our countries have the same level of human development, of standard of living. You imagine if I come back and we're joking about, I don't know what technology we would see at that point, but so we both have the same, all of our citizens have equal, equality and equal economic development. I think just there would be such a success, let alone, there's always sub-goals in between, but that's really where I hope that we really come together in the next 10 years.
I certainly hope that it does turn out to be that way. We'll see, but you're certainly doing...
I feel like it is.
Your Excellency, thank you once again for joining us today for this conversation. And as for our dear viewers, thank you once again for your attention. My name is Mijat Kontić, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Diplomat.
Uz svečano izvođenje himni Francuske, Srbije i Evropske unije u ambasadi Francuske u Beogradu obeležen je Dan državnosti, odnosno 236 godina od pada Bastilje i početka Francuske revolucije. Proslavi nacionalnog dana prisustvovala je predsjednica Skupštine Srbije Ana Brnabić, članovi vlade, diplomate i drugi prijatelji ambasade, koje je dočekao Fatih Aksal, otpravnik poslova u ambasadi Francuske. Obeležavanje Dana državnosti Francuske u Beogradu je i odraz dugogodišnjeg dubokog prijateljstva sa Srbijom, bilateralnih odnosa zasnovanih na istorijskom nasleđu i zajedničkoj viziji budućnosti, izjavio je Aksal.
Razvili smo aktivnu, konkretnu saradnju u oblastima ekonomije, energetike, digitalne tehnologije, kulture, obrazovanja i nauke. Ponosni smo što možemo da računamo na veoma dinamičnu francusku zajednicu u Srbiji, koja služi kao pravi most između naše dve zemlje, aktivno doprinoseći jačanju uzajamnih veza. Poseta predsjednika Emanuela Makrona u avgustu prošle godine dala je dodatni impuls našem strateškom partnerstvu i omogućila napredak na nekoliko značajnih projekata. Ali pre svega, ova poseta je nosila jasnu poruku. Srbija ima svoje mesto u Evropi.
Doskorašnji ambasador Francuske Pierre Košar napustio je Srbiju zbog nove diplomatske dužnosti, a dolazeći tim diplomata uskoro će u francuskoj ambasadi u Beogradu nastaviti svoj rad. Francusko-srpski odnosi biće i dalje u dobrim rukama, a Francuska će i u budućnosti pružati podršku Srbiji u ključnim oblastima, poput ekonomskog razvoja, vladavine prava, nezavisnosti pravosuđa i slobode medija, dodao je otpravnik Aksal. Poslanici Crnogorske skupštine, predstavnici diplomatskog kora, kardinal Ladislav Nemet i brojni drugi gosti okupili su se u Madlenijanumu na svečanosti povodom obeležavanja državnosti Crne Gore.
Veliki datum, 13. jul 1878. godine, potvrđuje međunarodno pravno priznanje Crne Gore, Pijemonta, Balkana, zvijezde vodilje mnogim narodima koji tu slobodu još nisu imali, a takođe i Srbije, jer istog dana uslijedilo i njeno međunarodno priznanje na Berlinskom kongresu. Crna Gora danas gradi prijateljske i partnerske odnose sa svim svojim susjedima, Aktivno učestvuje i doprinosi radu međunarodnih organizacija čija je članica, a na unutrašnjem planu podiže standard svojih građana, gradi infrastrukturu, ali i institucije, kako bi privukla što više turista i kredibilnih investitora. Ujedno Crna Gora gradi društvo jednakosti za sve.
U svom govoru ambasador Đoković naglasio je da je pristup Evropskoj uniji prioritet Crne Gore, koja sa Srbijom deli zajedničku prošlost i perspektivu članstva. Kako kaže, tu perspektivu u Crnoj Gori grade ne samo državni organi i institucije, već svi činioci društva. Prva robna kuća na Balkanu, CUM u Sofiji, od oktobra ove godine postaje Atika World, mesto na kojem se luksuzni brendovi susreću sa umetničkim delima iz celog sveta. Promocija projekta za srpske premium brendove u oblasti mode, lepote, vinske, gastro i turističke ponude održana je u hotelu Hyatt. Događaju su prisustvovali ambasadori Egipta i Bugarske, kao i gosti iz sveta biznisa, mode i medija.
Planiramo da u budućnosti ovaj prostor postane veliko kulturno središte, koje će obuhvatati muzej sa 6 sala, 4 sprata u kojima će biti maloprodajni objekti sa međunarodnim i brendovima sa Balkana. U okviru projekta predviđen je prostor koji će biti namenjen ekonomiji deljenja, a kompleks obuhvata hotel sa 5 zvezdica i po prvi put stambeni koncept.
Transformacija CUM-a u projekat Atika World ima za cilj da stvori savremeni centar koji nudi prefinjeno iskustvo kupovine i koji bi privukao međunarodne goste, ljubitelje luksuza i regionalne kupce koji su u potrazi za jedinstvenim proizvodima.
U okviru ove inicijative aktivno tražimo partnerstva sa renomiranim srpskim firmama iz oblasti vina, nameštaja, kozmetike, mode i beauty usluga. Ova živahna preduzetnička scena u Srbiji čini Srbiju prirodnim partnerom u ovom poduhvatu. Tako vas pozivamo da se pridružite u networkingu i da budete deo ovog projekta i vidjet ćete već u razgovorima koliko je sve to zanimljivo, koje su mogućnosti, koje su cene.
Prva robna kuća na Balkanu, CUM, izgrađena je 1957. godine u Sofiji, okružena ključnim institucijama, smeštena u srcu grada, predstavlja trajni simbol bugarske trgovine i kulture. Članovi žirija trećeg ciklusa nagrada Taste Awards za 2025. koje će biti dodeljene u decembru, obišli su laureate za najbolju vodu za 2024. godinu, odnosno izvor i postrojenje voda vode u Banji Vrujci. Tom prilikom ugostio ih je Vojinom Đorđević, osnivač i predsjednik kompanije Voda Voda, koji ih je sproveo kroz ceo proces proizvodnje, od doma vode preko fabrike do priče o plasiranju vode na domaće i inostrano tržište. O tome zašto je Voda Voda jedinstvena govorio je za Euronews televiziju.
Pre svega da počnemo da je Voda Voda predstavlja simbol autentične i arteške vode, ne samo u Srbiji, nego i u čitavom svetu. Kako ste u tome uspeli?
Hvala vam za ovako lepu najavu. Zaista smo ponosni zbog toga što jesmo zaista simbol nečega posebnog, odnosno prirodne arteške vode. Pa možda je odgovor u tome, postoji odgovor, pošto su arteške vode jako retke u svetu i mi smo dobili tu i čast i odgovornost i sreću da možemo tu vodu da u jednoj prelepoj ambalaži plasiramo pre svega u Srbiji, a zatim i na zahtevnim svetskim tržištima. I baš zahvaljujući tom kvalitetu i tome što ne samo kvalitetu sastavu minerala, nego tome što voda dolazi sa 605 metara i što se u tom procesu do flaširanja ne tretira, ne obrađuje. To je zaista nešto posebno i samo zahvaljujući tome smo prepoznati u svijetu kao jedan vanserijski proizvod i to je jedini put uspeha.
Šta ima Voda Voda, a druge vode ne samo u Srbiji, nego, boga mi, i na svetskom tržištu nemaju?
Pa eto, mi smo imali nekad i tu kampanju prirodno inteligentna, time smo možda na neki najbolji način hteli da objasnimo šta je naša prednost, šta je suština. Dakle, priroda je, mi znamo da je najbolje, da sve što je prirodno i što priroda stvori da je najbolje. A mi smo imali sreću, imamo sreću da taj divan proizvod, kvalitet, odnosno taj sastav minerala koji hiljadama godina stoji na 605 metara dubine, je zaštićen sa 200 metara nepropusnih scena i zato je to arteška voda, jer mnoge vode možda i jesu, priroda ih je dobro stvorila, ali one se usled vremenskih kiša i tako dalje, nekih dešavanja, zamute, odnosno dobiju nešto što ne treba i onda te vode moraju da se filtriraju i čiste. Dakle, naša voda je zaštićena, osim toga imamo izuzetan proces proizvodnje da ništa ne bi pokvarili u tom procesu ono što je priroda stvorila.
Koliko je bilo izazovno ostati dosledan viziji i vrednostima koje ste vi razvili kao lider već kad je voda u pitanju?
Dakle, s jedne strane dolaze velike mogućnosti da se za neke velike novac to proda ili pak s druge strane na druge načine pokušavaju da dođu u mogućnost da bi kupili brend. Međutim, opet se vraćamo i ja sam imao mnogo takvih izazova u životu, jedne i druge vrste, ali uvek je bila vodilja to što sam znao da smo mi na koje god tržište strane smo se pojavili, prodavali smo, ako ne više, ono barem isto kao vodeći svetski brendovi i znao sam da koliko ljudi cene kvalitet u inostranstvu, gde kad se kaže da je arteška voda, to znači već da je, kao kad bi rekao NBA liga ili Liga šampiona, tu nisu potrebno dodatna objašnjenja. Dakle, znao sam da će voda sigurno uspeti u svim zemljama sveta, jer to je naša bila vizija od prvog dana, da taj kvalitet i taj dizajn i jednu tako dobru vodu učinimo dostupnimo ljudima širom planete.
Šta bi bio vaš savet mladim ljudima koji ulaze tek u vode preduzetništva?
Da to što rade, da rade naravno sa entuzijazmom, što i nije sporno obzirom da su se odlučili za to i da uče usput, da stiču znanje ili i kako u svome kompaniji ili od drugih kompanije da uče znanje i da ostanu, da vode uvek računa o kvalitetu. Na kraju šta god se radi, kvalitet je ipak presudan, a takođe i strajnost kad dođu teški trenuci i neizvesne situacije da ostanu sebi tome. I čak i ako se nešto ne uspe, to je samo put do novog uspeha.
Znači, u ovoj boci, osim dobrog dizajna, u stvari najvažnija stvar je unutra. Ta je vizija, strast i sve ostalo.
Jedinstvenost i blagodeti voda vode potvrdile su vodeće institucije za sertifikovanje kvaliteta, među kojima i Svetska zdravstvena organizacija. Na poziv ambasade Republike Turske u Austriji, Direkcije za komunikacije, direktorka austrijskog izdanja magazina Diplomacy Commerce Svetlana Nenadović-Glušac prisustvovala je centralnoj svečanosti povodom Dana demokratije i nacionalnog ujedinjenja, održanoj 15. jula u predsjedničkoj palati u Ankari. Ovaj dan se u Turskoj obeležava kao državni praznik u znak sećanja na događaj iz noći između 15. i 16. jula 2016. godine, kada je osujećen pokušaj vojnog puča i svrgavanja demokratski izabrane vlasti na čelu sa predsjednikom Recepom Tayyipom Erdoganom. Taj dramatični trenutak smatra se prekretnicom u savremenoj istoriji Turske i simbolom borbe za očuvanje demokratije i jedinstva naroda. Svečanosti je prisustvovalo oko 500 uglednih zvanica iz zemlje i sveta, među kojima i 114 predstavnika medija iz 42 različite države. Program je započeo intoniranjem himne, uvodnim govorima i molitvom imama, nakon čega se okupljenima, kao i široj javnosti putem televizijskog prenosa, obratio predsjednik Erdogan. U okviru protokola novinarima je omogućen i obilazak Memorijalnog muzeja 15. jul, u kojem se uz pomoć savremenih tehnologija, multimedije i vizuelnih efekata realistično prikazuju ključni trenuci pokušaja puča u Ankari, Istanbulu i Izmiru, gradovima u kojima se te noći odvijala drama. Prema zvaničnim podacima, tokom pokušaja državnog udara poginula je najmanje 251 osoba, dok je više od 2200 građana ranjeno. Puč je zaustavljen u ranim jutarnjim satima, zahvaljujući otporu građana i lojalnih bezbednosnih snaga. Obeležavanje Dana demokratije i nacionalnog ujedinjenja organizuje se širom Turske, a centralne aktivnosti nastavljaju se u Istanbulu pod sloganom Ime pobede Turska, na kojima će magazin Diplomacy Commerce također prisustvovati.